Welcome to the Abject Demiurge podcast. Just a reminder, this is a new podcast, and in keeping with the theme of the show, none of these episodes will be edited. They are pre-recorded, and if you find something of value in what follows, I'm trying not to monetize stories of others, and I really don't want to do ad reads. So if you do find something of value in here, my link tree is in that QR code if you want to grab that here at the beginning, or it will be back up at the end if you're so inclined. This is episode 5. We were talking to Jeremiah. And so I'm going to roll the intro and we'll get started. I think I may have been muted for that. So I'm just going to go through that again real quick. The QR code now goes to charity in lieu of social links or donation pages. It is going to a charity called Literacy for Incarcerated Teens. So if anybody wants to help out with a good cause, you can scan that QR code and donate there. They could use it. So, Jeremiah, is your name tag good? Is that okay with you? Jeremiah Ryder? Okay. So, I guess we'll start. I redid this because I had some issues when I talked to the last guest. So, you can tell us a little bit about yourself, a little or as much as you want. Starting, just where are you from? What kind of artist are you? I mean, we know you're a writer. Like, we covered that.
Yeah. So where am I from? Well, right now I live in Meadville, PA, Western PA. But I grew up all over the world. My dad worked for the embassy, American embassy, so he was a diplomat. So I spent my childhood living in 5 different countries, 4 different continents. And so obviously that experience pretty much informed everything. And certainly the writing. And then he retired from the military 30 years ago. So my parents are from this area, Western PA, Crawford County. And so we settled here. And so there's quite a culture shock, obviously.
Yeah.
And as far as the writing, in school, I had no interest really. It was all sports related for me. I never read anything as far as literature or anything like that, or poetry, or any sort of nonfiction I read was, sports biographies.
Yeah.
Sports Illustrated, that kind of stuff. I wrote for the paper, as an assistant sports editor, the high school paper, and then when I graduated, I just had kind of a breakdown. There's a lot of anxiety and depression that I hadn't addressed or understood. I didn't have the I didn't have the vocabulary, I guess. Or the understanding of what that was, or even if it was an issue.
Yeah.
And so I started therapy and medicine. It's kind of a hit and miss type thing.
Yeah.
And,
it is. Been there.
And I thought, exactly. I mean, and I thought I have to express myself somehow. I felt sort of closed off. And the way to do that for me was to write. So I started to read voraciously, almost as if it was like my life depended on it. As absurd as that sounds, I kind of felt that way, and so I just read everything I could get my hands on. Anything, like I went straight to the classics. Like it was poetry. I started reading poetry, and then I started to write poetry. It didn't follow any format or anything like that. It didn't follow any rules. There was no rhyme.
Yeah.
Um, but I felt good doing it. I felt like I was expressing myself and what I was feeling internally, and there was really there's no audience. I'm the audience basically
Yeah.
of the writing, so there was no fear. I could just let it all out, and and so I had a bunch of poems, I guess prose poems, I'd say, and I put them in a book form, and about 400 pages, and I self-published it. Um, and it's out of print now. It's not something I advertised really.
Yeah.
I was 21 years old at the time, and I had no idea what I was doing.
Yeah.
It was just sort of I have to get words on the page that I think help me understand myself, basically.
The catharsis of it.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, yeah. And and for a while, I mean, I would do that. I had like a typewriter, like an old Olympia typewriter, and I had a pipe, and I would fill it up with like vanilla, scented
Yeah.
tobacco, like I was, Faulkner or something,
I did
uh,
pipes too.
exactly. I mean, and then that became its own sort of hobby and habit,
Yeah.
I just, um, and then I guess I graduated to cigarettes, which is not great at all.
Yeah.
But it was easier, I guess. I got lazy with the whole maintenance of the pipe, and
Yeah. I went the other
it's
way. I stopped
yeah.
smoking cigarettes and started a pipe, and
Well, that's
yeah.
the way to do it. Actually,
Yeah.
if you want to do that, it's healthier. I mean, it's not healthy, but it's better.
Yeah, I
In my
collect them now, but I don't smoke them
Yeah,
anymore.
no, I have quite a few pipes still, and but yeah, so I stopped writing for a long time
Yeah.
after the book. I was just kind of ashamed of it. Actually,
Yep.
wasn't proud of it. I thought it's not good. Um,
It
and
happens.
then and about 5 years ago, right before COVID, a couple years before COVID, I got back into it because I'd
Yeah.
done a lot of diary writing, journals, kind of to take my temperature um,
Yeah.
psychologically.
Yep.
And then I said, I'm just going to do this. I'm going to write everything. And it's going to be me. It's going to be about me. It's going to be about what I'm going through, how I process the day to day. Because I spend a lot of my time alone. It's sort of monastic. Um,
Yeah.
I don't know if you've read Thomas Merton. He's a Catholic monk. He published a bunch of stuff. I think his
Yeah.
autobiography, Seven Story Mountain, and then so I read a lot of Eastern philosophy and sort of that culture, the hermit culture, like,
Yeah.
and because I was trying to justify, it wasn't anxiety or depression. It was sort of a choice, but it's not. It's all that stuff, you know.
Yeah.
And so the writing was me. Um, Almost introducing me to myself, if that makes sense. It's trying to come to terms with who I am, trying to accept that person, um, trying to like that person. And I thought I could do that through the writing. That I would write it, and then I would listen to what I wrote. Um, I would actually. I would use like a foreign voice, like a guy with a British accent, or even a woman,
Yeah.
with just to almost to observe it objectively.
I read
So
out loud. I read out loud to
exactly,
myself
yeah, yeah,
because
yep,
you hear
yep,
the flow and the yeah.
exactly, and so I couldn't even read out loud to myself because it was my voice,
Yeah.
and that was somehow unacceptable to me. So it had to
Yeah.
be completely removed. And so, and I liked it. I did. I was like, this is an interesting sort of perspective in person, but it's me,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. I can't listen to these. I don't watch or listen to them afterwards.
Yeah, see, this will be an interesting thing for me to see if I do. I mean, because I will probably, it could be that I don't, or it could be that I watch it every day and I analyze everything I say and
Yeah.
all the expressions and certain words I use or repeat.
Yeah.
But
I
so
say
that's
all the time.
yeah. I think I might have some of those too.
Yeah.
So,
We,
I think,
we get through it, you know. That's the whole point, you know, just to be okay with those things and be okay with make not just ourselves but anyone to understand that when you're creating something, part of it is, you know, those things that, you know, looking at those things and being able to say it's okay that I screwed up, you know.
Yeah.
That's how you grow. So
Exactly. But that's and then the growth, the writing is growth for me. It really is.
Yep.
It's how I sort of, you know, I take my temperature basically. I'm like, what kind of a fever am I in right now? And
yeah.
and then in the writing, it'll be there between the lines. And it's not about anything. It's me. And I will explore things in my life, my past, some memories, maybe things I've misremembered, even trauma. I'll go into that in the writing.
Yep.
Nothing's off limits, and it's for me. It really is. I mean, and that's a lot of my problem is sharing with other people, and I have, you know, a few people here and there, friends, close people, but even that, it's difficult.
It is. Yeah.
Because it's so personal. It's very personal to me, and as long as I like it and I can live with it, it's really okay. That's all for right now. That's more than enough for me.
Well, and I kind of get that because I used to, I think, focus more on like introspective, and I think because of the response to that, I moved into fiction like a really long time ago, and it's taken me years to start being able to look, well, I enjoy writing the fiction, but let me start pulling some more personal things in there. Like the novel that I'm working on now, it's my main character is neurodivergent. You know, she's got severe anxiety, she's got severe depression, and the challenge for me has been able to, what I want to be able to do is write it in a way that is like how I feel, not only how I feel, but how I feel like I'm perceived. So
Exactly.
like a reader that doesn't connect with those things are going to go, you know, she's crazy, you know, but
Yep.
I want people to be able to connect that in a way that do have that feeling, and they can say, I understand this. You know, a reader that doesn't, because that's how I feel we get perceived is, you know, this part, you know, he's got issues, you know, he's either sad at the pop of a gun, or he's, you know, scared all the time, or, you know, and I want to be able to represent that in a way that, and it's taken me years to be brave enough to be able to put that in there. So I think I got to the fiction because the real writing was too much for me, and it's taken me years to be able to, and it feels better to me because I feel like I'm not as disconnected from it. It's really hard to write when you're disconnected from
Yep.
what you're working on. So I mean, I get
Absolutely.
that.
No, I like what you said. Yeah. No, it's no, it's hard for me to write fiction. I have, you know, a couple. I tend to go a little overboard, and like it becomes
Yeah.
very irreverent and absurd.
Yeah.
It's like I can't be serious about it. And so when I focus on me, maybe it's you know, just pure ego or self-absorption or narcissism, or maybe that's all part of it. But you were talking about, you know, being labeled crazy in a character, and I'm one that's like, how can you live in this society and not have and not be a little
Not be
off?
crazy. Yeah.
If you would, I think it's nuts not to be nuts. If that makes any
It's
sense.
designed to make us crazy. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's healthy to be crazy.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Um,
Yep.
Whatever that crazy is.
Yeah.
And so I get back to, I guess, sanity with the writing, and 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 that's been, I think, the greatest therapy I've had. No offense to any of the doctors or
No.
medicine I've taken, but there's been nothing to equal expressing myself in that way in the writing that
Yeah.
comes even close. Um, but yeah,
So it kind of makes me think of David Foster Wallace a little bit. The way
Yep.
you're talking about it, like
yep,
kind of, I'm kind of getting that vibe. So, like
yeah, I
that's
know. Yeah, I actually
that's
I did
difficult.
it is because it's a
Yeah.
very sad story.
Yep.
It's a guy who, by all accounts, was considered a genius of his generation as a
Yep.
writer. He had been validated by his peers, by his students, by critics, and it wasn't enough, And he had written, Infinite Jest, which was considered like the opus for his time. Um,
Yeah.
and you want to talk about insane. I mean, that's a heck of a tune, or tome, or whatever.
Yeah.
Footnotes and all. But
Yeah.
yeah,
It's
and
difficult.
it's
Like emotionally, it's difficult, especially when you
yeah,
connect with it. It's one of those things that
yep.
the more you connect with it, the more difficult it gets, I think.
I started it, I think, 20 years ago. I couldn't get through it, and then maybe 4 years ago, I was like, I'm just going to take my time, and I'm going to give
Yep.
it. I'm going to give it as much patience and a thorough reading as I possibly can, and I got through it, and it took me a couple of months to really do it, but I'm kind of afforded that amount of time.
Yeah.
Um, and so I did it, and it hit home. I mean, just the way he writes about just the psychology of each character, the
Yeah.
emotions of them, the internal stuff. I mean, it was like reading myself, really, in each of these characters. I was like,
Yeah.
this guy sees it, he understands it.
Yep.
Even going back to like Tolstoy, you read Anna Karenina, and you're like, this
Yep.
guy is way ahead of his time.
Yep.
I mean, this is before Freud and psychoanalysis, and Tolstoy, he's just on par. It's on mark, all of it.
Yep.
It's like, it's beautiful. But yeah, Foster Wallace, definitely. Then you have the poets seem to have a lot of that. Sylvia Plath, Anne Sexton, Robert Lowell. Yeah, some of my influences, like Allen Ginsberg when I was younger. I read Howl when I was, saw the best minds of my generation destroyed by madness.
Yeah. So one of my favorite, because I like the connection between mythology and literature.
Yeah.
How like the ancient stories inform modern stories, and how does a story last? And one of my favorite mythologies ever is the Epic of Gilgamesh.
Yeah.
But Seamus Heaney he has his own version of Beowulf, and it's absolutely one of my favorites. I don't actually read a lot of poetry. I do like staples like Poe and stuff like that. But I love Seamus Heaney, and his Beowulf just floors me. I've read it multiple times. I love it.
Yeah, I haven't read that. I should. That's
It's great. It's really just it's the way he takes like the general Beowulf and turns it into something like it's Beowulf's like a song of a hero, and he turns
Yep.
it into a song. It's amazing, and it's
He's Irish, right?
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
poetry for me sometimes I find like the staples like Shel Silverstein, the easy stuff, I'm kind of I back off a little bit of it, but the bell jar is the most I ever got into Sylvia Plath, and I think because it's more narrative for her, and
Yeah.
but I like the classic literature that kind of feels to me poetry like Rebecca by Du Maurier is one of my favorite books of all time.
I read that.
I recommend it. It's very soft spoken and her prose is just very I don't know. It's something else. Shirley Jackson, same
Shirley
thing.
Jackson.
She sounds a little bit like a less terrifying than Shirley Jackson. She's more like down to earth, but her prose are the same. I love Shirley Jackson.
Yeah, no, she's fantastic. Yeah.
So I actually don't regularly talk to other writers, so this is I'm getting like way off. This is kind of cool.
No, that's fine. I don't know.
Usually the other writers I talk to are like, in like writers groups and, yeah. here's some criticism or here's some, help you out with your manuscript. And it's hard to, I don't enjoy that process. I haven't done that in a long time.
No, I avoid it.
Yeah.
It's
I've ruined many a manuscripts by passing it around between other people. So
yeah, no, if I share my stuff, I'm just like, read it. That's it.
Yeah.
Tell them, lie to me if you have to.
Yeah.
Because I'm too self-conscious, just in general, to a painful degree, actually. And so I'd say with the writing, I'm probably the most confident, maybe irrationally so at times.
But you have to be, or you quit.
Exactly. And
you
so
have to believe in it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so that keeps me going because I'm like, no, this, you read enough and then you're like, well, I've done some homework here. I'm qualified to at least dabble in this. And then you keep doing it. And then you're like, well, it comes not easily, but it seems natural. Like I don't really have to think about it. I open a page or then I start writing. And then I don't edit it. I don't think about it. Like I'm just going to go. I'm going to do that later. I'm going to do the thinking later, and I'm going to do too much of it, quite frankly. And I'm going to edit the crap out of it, and the best of my ability. And I can't dwell on it too much. Sometimes I just have to let it go.
Yeah.
Or it's not going to see the light of day. I'm going to delete it, and then so I just let it go. And then maybe I go back to it in months, maybe even a year.
Yeah.
And then I can kind of look at it. It's better for me to do it that way. But yeah. What else?
So what do you, well, I'm kind of trying to find that I'm learning that the pre-prep that I do on these kind of is meaningless. So, because I think this is more, I based this before I ever started doing this, so I based it more on what I think where I would go, but I think it's kind of, these things are starting to happen more naturally than I think I expected. So,
it's good though.
What would you consider to be, as far as your writing goes, what would you consider to be the dream? Like the uppermost, as fantastical as it gets, thing.
The whole delusions of grandeur type thing.
Yes.
And I would say just some respectability among peers or people that write, to kind of qualify it as my own thing. It doesn't have to be good or bad. It's my own style. It's my own writing, and it has something to say, or I have something to say.
Yeah.
And it's a value to other people, maybe people who are suffering through different things, whether it's any kind of mental illness or any kind of emotional problem. You can read it and you're like, I get this, I understand this.
And it helps. Yeah.
Absolutely. And that it doesn't have to be 10, 20, 30 people. as few as that, and that to me is a success. I mean, that's probably a low bar, but that's probably as much as I can handle, to be honest with
Yeah.
you. I would have to come out of an incredible shell to
Yeah.
accept even praise,
Yeah.
because I'm like, well, you're BSing me, or you're
Yeah.
just trying to, you know. So you can't win with me, really. I'm going to find a way to turn it and make it into something that it's not, or you know, dilute it in some way. Yeah,
You can
like the
praise
dream.
all you
Yeah,
want, but I don't believe you. Yeah. Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, I think the dream though is to have an agent and a publisher, people who
Yeah.
just put out my stuff, and that's it. And whether anybody reads it or not, that's up to them.
Yep.
Just to have it there and to do it legitimately,
Yeah.
and to be paid.
That's mine too. Like traditional publishing. My dream was always if I could walk someday into a bookstore and see my name on a spine.
Yep.
And it doesn't have to be anything that anybody buys. If somebody took a chance, because it's so risky now, the publishing industry is so there's I think it's closed off so much from there's so much the market's so flooded with self-publishing, and now we got
Yep.
AI writing fiction now, and
Yep.
I think all it's doing is closing off the publishing market because it's so risk averse now because they're so afraid to take a chance on new stuff that they're staying in the corners where they're comfortable with the people that
Absolutely.
feel comfortable and safe. So
Yep. Those
and
people, and it is you're blocking off a lot of interesting voices, new
yep,
voices, people who might take a chance, and to maybe further the form
yeah,
in some way. And but I think that's kind of the way it is in all media and
yeah,
in the culture. You're saturated even in movies.
yeah,
With all the streaming, it's nothing lasts. You have something released, let's say on like Netflix or something.
yeah,
It's there for maybe a week, and then you forget about it. And it was a big deal for them for a short period of time, and then it just disappears. And the same with books. You go to Amazon, just the amount of content,
yeah.
just in general fiction or anything. It's almost it's overwhelming, actually.
It's hard to be seen in a self-publishing market, I think.
Yep.
And I think that so much self-publishing too goes beyond just writing it and putting it out there. That requires you to be your own agent. That requires you to be your own marketing department. It requires you, and you lose. To me, that just doesn't feel okay because it feels like I'm taking
Yep.
time away from my writing time
Yes.
to which is hard enough to find anyway, because I got a full-time job and then I write and then I added this to it, which seems counterproductive, but it's actually helping me with doing this every week is helping me. So, but I mean, I think I think it's more difficult now, and I think
No, I agree. Yeah.
it feels like self-publishing to me would be hobbling, you know. But I
It
mean,
almost. I'm not sure. I feel like it's pretty much the same as not publishing almost.
yeah,
I mean, you
unless you're
could
in
say
that lucky
yes.
few that can do all those things, and yeah,
If you're capable of that and you like doing it and it works for you, then do it. And
yeah,
but for me, no, it's just it's not enough for me. Then I don't know what is actually. But yeah,
yeah,
I'm quite fine with sort of an audience of one for now.
yeah,
But yeah, it's because it just does everything I needed to do. I want it to do. It's more than a hobby. It really is. It's sort of embedded in me. It's something I'm not going to quit doing.
yep,
It's an exercise, really. It's a mental exercise that is invaluable, and I'll do it until I can't do it anymore. And if I can't type anymore, I'll just speak into a microphone and just have it typed out for me.
Yeah.
Or I'll hire my sister as a secretary or one of her
Yeah.
kids or something. Be like, no, you
Yeah.
type out my stuff for me.
Just type what I say. No matter how much no matter how difficult it sounds.
It's too fast. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
This is junk. No, just do it. Just do it.
Yeah. So, comparatively, what would you consider versus the absolute dream? Because to me, the dream and my definition of success are kind of similar. Because to me, successful implies return on investment.
Yep.
So to me, success would be, if I could trade my day to day for writing, I'd be happy, 10 hours a day, 12 hours a day, just writing and make that my job. Like that would just be the absolute best thing.
Yep.
So to me, they're kind of the same, but I don't think that's the same for everybody. So if the dream is this one thing, does success about equate the same to you, or is success less? Is success, just writing for yourself? Does that you consider yourself successful in that?
I mean, it's a good question. I think it really is my own state of mind and how I define it, and that varies. Right now, yeah, it is okay because I have the time to write. Even if I'm not physically writing, I'm writing in my head always.
Yeah.
Even right now, there's some sort of writing going on in this dialogue, and so it's never anything I'm outside of. There's always material, but success, yeah, I think just being able to write for a living, and one of the things I struggle with is taking on responsibilities, adult responsibilities.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of shame admitting that, but it's true. And that's a process that I'm going through now.
Yeah.
And it's something that I'm going to, be working through for as long as I live,
Yeah.
And that's just how it is. But the writing is going to be a part of that. And I think it is, for me, it's already a success because I got it down on paper. I got some tough things in my life and how I felt. It's all there. It really is.
There, you have results that you're happy with, that you see every day, and okay.
Yes. Yeah.
I like
there's
that.
There's nothing in there that I'm like, well, I should have said this, or I should explore this area of myself, or my past, or how I'm doing. I've done it, and that I think the next stage for me is to actually remove myself from it in some way, to write like a fiction with characters, with plots. These are things I'm allergic to right now. Plot and characters and even realistic dialogue. I tend to get, for some reason, if I write dialogue, it becomes it's almost unreal. It's not natural, but I'm almost doing that on purpose for some. I don't know. I'm like I need this guy to be really pretentious, and but I think that's my next step is to kind of do what you're doing now, is to
Merge the
implement
two together. Yep.
Exactly. Yep. That's my next thing in writing.
I am outline averse. I don't know that. I usually write I'll write a draft that's like short story length, and then over the course of years it'll grow into a big thing. And then I'm third draft in. Now I just created an outline because I'm like, okay, now I know what's happening. Now I can pin it in little stages because I can't stick to it if I make it to begin with. So I mean I get that, especially, and it is when you're writing fiction, the farther away you get from it, the harder it is to because you only want to say the things that you need to say. So you have to find a way to pull it close enough that you can say those things at a distance. And that's the thing that's taken me a lot of years because because when I was a kid, I mean, I wrote a lot when I was a kid. Like,
Yeah.
I sent, I was like 12 or 13. I typed up a X-Files screenplay and I put it in an envelope and I mailed it to whatever Fox address I could find. And it probably went in the trash somewhere, but like it, it was,
That's
I was
awesome.
always trying, it's always been the thing that you feel it,
Yeah.
and I think that some people, we don't always find it till later. Even if it's not writing, we don't always find our medium till later. And whenever I talk to people about stuff, one of the things I like to talk about is non-artists and how we feel like they communicate with us about our art. Because a lot of times, like, without being published, it feels like the conversation always devolves into talking about your hobby.
Yes.
When, as long as you're doing your thing, and even if you stop, like, I know a lot of people during COVID, they had a lot of output, like a lot of writers, a lot of artists, they were full speed ahead. Like, I'm stuck at home, I'm doubling my output, and I didn't write almost at all for 2 years. It shot everything. I was like, we're all going to die. This is the end. What's the point? And it made it more difficult. And but I did not consider myself a writer. I just considered myself having a hard time. Like, it's the one thing that no matter what happened in my life, I would at least try to find room for. Even with not doing it, I'd sit down and I'd have an emotional, experience because I couldn't do the thing that I know I need to be doing. And
You feel kind of lost when you're not doing it. You're like, it's like
yeah,
you're not taking your medicine or something.
yeah.
You know?
And I don't
You're,
think a lot of people understand, like, that, like, the idea that you the difference between writer versus author, too. Like, a writer is, I think, a state. It's the state you exist in because you're doing it when you're not doing it. Like, if I'm working all day, I'm thinking about that. I'm wishing I was doing that. If when we're out at the store, like my wife and I were at the store earlier, I'm thinking about, what I'm working on this evening, where I'm going to go with this thing. It's just, it's the thoughts. And, because I can't just sit down, like, it is hard for me. Despite the fact that it comes natural, it's when you actually sit down to take all these things that, are in there, when you go to put them down, you can only focus on one thing at a time.
Yep.
You can't, so I have to prepare. I have to get in the mindset. I have to prepare myself. And so I think I don't actually talk to most people. Like, I sometimes wonder if people I know see these or are ever going to see them, or be like, I didn't know he wrote.
yeah.
Because I don't talk about it because I have never had a good experience with unless I'm talking to somebody who reads a lot or somebody who's an artist of another kind. I think generally people tend to be dismissive of it if you can't give them proof of output. And I learned a long time ago that, I just do it and do the work, and I don't really mention it. And I think that's something that I want to try to solve. I want to be able to get non-artists to be able to understand that I believe most people are artists, because people always say to me, well, I'm not an artistic person. I just think that they haven't found their thing yet. And
I agree
some
with that,
people miss out on it, but we've been painting since we lived in caves.
Yep.
I think it's absolutely critical to our nature to tell stories of some kind, no matter what kind.
I mean, we're obsessed with it. We're obsessed with storytelling, especially in the last 2 centuries. I mean, that's the culture, storytelling. Even in sports, we love the storytelling. So you can be a jock and say, I don't like the creative process. I disagree. I think sports is a creative process. It's just
Yep.
different. It's like physical creativity. But yeah, no, you're absolutely right.
It's how we create empathy for people that we
Yep.
don't us we learn about other people. Like music is the same way. Like
Yep.
we we listen to or read things that we don't have experience in, and we become empathetic to other people. And I
think that's
even
the
even through
best-
fiction, because we're still
best,
getting
yeah.
somebody's story. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think that's the best case scenario, is just the connection, the empathy,
Yep.
like you were saying, to put yourself in those shoes, that skin, regardless if can relate. I mean, that's the point, to get to that point where you can relate. And that's my goal in writing. And I don't know if I've done it yet. I haven't really done enough. I haven't exposed myself in that way. But
It's hard.
But when I write, it is kind of the equivalent of me just taking off my clothes. It really is. I'm like, I'm just going to take it all off, and I'm going to put it right here. And that's where it's difficult for me to share it. And that's something I'm working on, and it's going to happen. I'm going to get there. And if it, like I said earlier, I mean, my success, what I define it as success, is just maybe a couple of people. That's all it needs to be.
Making a connection with people. Yep.
Making a connection. Absolutely.
Yep. Especially with strangers. To me, that feels more important. Like my mom is my biggest fan. My wife. But
Hold on.
at the same time, like,
Turn on my light.
but at the same time, like, if somebody that I have no relationship at all, somebody, that can read something and say, this feels
Yep.
to me some way, some kind of feeling, whether it's anger or sadness or whatever, you're making a connection with somebody in a way that would otherwise be impossible, because the only form of communication you're using is words, and you're not in front of them, you're not manipulating them, they're just reading, and they're getting closer to something that you're not even connected to anymore.
Yep.
And to me, that is, yeah, I think that's important, because I've read so many things that, one of my favorite books I read last year was The Name of the Rose by Umberto Eco.
Yep.
I remember the damn movie when I was a kid is terrible, but
Sean Connery and
Yeah.
Christian Slater. Yeah.
yeah, I loved a movie when I was a kid, and I tried to read that book probably late teens, and I couldn't.
tough.
It is. And last year I read it, and it was probably one of my favorite things, and I felt like I was missing out on it. But there's absolutely nothing in that book that I associate with, other than maybe him himself as an author. But
Exactly.
it still was incredibly moving and hilarious, and it is just absolutely great. And even because he's not, it's even a translation from he's Italian, and
Yep.
yeah,
Right.
and it still was incredibly moving, and I
That's a
it's
guy
one of those.
He's read everything. You look
Yes.
at he's a what do I want to say?
A
His
symbologist.
library.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's just
Yeah.
he's a collector. He's a book collector. He has. Is he still alive, or is he passed? on?
I think when I was reading, I read that he had passed, but maybe I could be
Yeah.
wrong.
Yeah.
But the whole book is about books. I mean, it's literally about books, and as funny as it is, by the end of it, it was just, it was heartbreaking, but also it connected with me in a way that I wouldn't have expected it to. And that's one of those things that when you read something like that's what I want people to feel. I want people to be surprised that I'm reading about, hundreds of years ago monastery and librarians and stuff that I have, I don't have a connection to, but I felt something for them in their situation. And that to me is
It's like a
the pinnacle.
superpower.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is.
So, imposter syndrome.
Yes.
I think,
Yeah.
I think different kinds of art. This is something specific that I like to talk about because it is my worst enemy. I think that different kinds of art don't necessarily aren't affected by it as much. I think long form tends to be affected by it more because you have more time to sit on it, more time to think about it.
Yeah.
And how does that normally affect you, if it does? I think we probably touched on it, like from the side a little bit, but
Yeah. I mean, it fluctuates. There's times where I'm usually I'll write about it too. I'll write about there'll be like a voice inside me that's like, well, this is I'm feeling what your imposter syndrome. Or I'm not worthy of this. I'm not qualified for it. I don't know what I'm doing. All that stuff. I'm fooling myself.
yep,
And then I will actually go into it. Then I will make that what I write about is this imposter syndrome. Me feeling basically unworthy of what I'm doing or the work or the process, anything creative. Yeah, it's something that oh, my cat's getting on
yeah,
Titus. But yeah, so that's something I deal with, and then there'll be the opposite too, where I will think like this is transcendent. I've somehow tapped into something that has not been done before, by
yeah,
millions and millions of books and writers, pages.
over centuries. Yeah,
Yeah, and then somehow me, this recluse
you have
in
to be
Western
though.
PA,
Yeah,
the ego, it really is. You have to almost have to go back to the athlete mentality, this sort
yep,
of weird arrogance, this ego, because it propels me forward. And then I kind of write with that confidence, and then when I read it back, I'm like, well, who the hell is this guy? I don't know this person, But yeah, it's something I deal with big time. Yeah.
do you have like a something you do to get out of it, or does something specific cause it?
I think to get out of it, like kind of what I said, I will put it in there in the writing. I'll almost have like my subconscious is saying, who are you? Or, this is BS, or
Yeah,
I don't know if you swear on this, but yeah,
yeah, I do. Yeah,
So I'll go through a period of like self pity and self loathing, and then somehow it'll turn for me in the writing,
yeah,
and I can kind of maneuver out of it.
yeah,
And then I'll read it back and I'll say, well, that was unnecessary,
yeah,
but it helped me get out of it. So that's how I do. I kind of write my way out of it, and that helps, and that gets me through it because I'm just sort of putting it in there. I'm letting myself know that it's okay that I feel this way,
yeah.
that I might feel out of my league or completely unqualified in some way, and that it does help. Just being aware of it and then addressing it, and that's how I
Yeah.
do it. Yeah.
So I have never had an out for that. I usually
Yeah.
it just wears off. Eventually, the need to get back to work overcomes the God, I suck. What the hell am I? And I get to the point where I stop. And then I feel shame about stopping, and then that feeds the feeling of I don't belong doing this. It's why I'm not doing it, and that's why I'm failing. And then eventually it just gets back to I still need to do this thing because
Yeah.
I'm not me. It visibly affects my mood. I'm less healthy.
And you've been doing it since you were a kid,
Yeah.
So it's part of your it's kind of your routine,
Yeah.
It really is. It's like
So I kind of want to go off and so we were talking about your lessening of what is it, stimuli, and
yeah.
how how do you think that improves, like the way you live in your lifestyle? How do you think? Do we want to call that seclusion or
Yeah, I
reclusive?
mean,
Or
I do. I say recluse, but you can say hermit.
yeah,
And it is low stimuli because I don't process stress well, or
yeah. No, I get it.
or people or conversations or
Yeah,
sound. Um, so I have to mute it, so it becomes almost like a temple, like
yeah,
and um, and there are times where I don't even watch anything. It's just silence. It's just me and my thoughts in my head. And I don't recommend it for everybody. It's not for everybody, but for
yeah,
me, um, I do it pretty well. But it's not. I kind of exhausted it actually. I mean, this is even when I was married for about a decade, I was still in that state of mind, um,
yeah,
and uh, and now very much so, to a degree that it's very new to me. This kind of solitude. I will go a week without communicating with anyone, uh, and I can do that. I mean, aside from the cat here, I mean, I have. I'm lucky. I have pretty good neighbors, and they sort of keep an eye on me too. My mom, she'll text. My sister, I
yeah,
visit her, and she kind of, both of them, the women in my life, my mom and my sister, they make sure I get enough of what I need socially,
yeah,
to the best. But it's up to me ultimately. They can't force me, but it's frustrating because I know I need more of it,
yeah,
and I've lost relationships because of that, because
yeah,
of my inability to just do a basic, um, just visiting people
yeah,
and communicating with them. And then I tend to overshare a lot too with people. Like I go
yeah.
really deep into my, and it throws people off and it turns people off
It
sometimes.
does. I have the same. I think it's also just an anxiety
Yeah,
thing. Like because I don't. My social skills are like unrehearsed. Like you just
yeah,
because when you the only way that you learn to be a social creature is by being social and picking up on other people's stuff. But when you're constantly terrified of talking
yeah,
to people, you don't really listen to how they talk. You just kind of
exactly.
wait for it to be over, so you're not learning anything. And I think that
Yeah,
that's why writing helps us is because we're
absolutely.
communicating in a way that's comfortable for us
Yep,
that doesn't have to be socially acceptable. And it's
that's right.
extremely hard for me to communicate with people too. So, I mean, I'm there. I get it.
And I find
Yeah,
that when I talk to people, I'm almost rehearsing my own writing. What if that makes any sense?
it
I'm almost
does.
having
To me, it does. Yeah,
yeah, I'm having a dialogue with somebody, and it's like I'm writing to them, or I end up mirroring them in some way,
yeah,
or I don't even hear them. I'm just hearing myself, and it's coming out in through them in their voice, but it's me.
yeah,
If that makes any sense, it's a
yeah.
strange kind of thing, and so it kind of freaks me out a little bit. So,
How do I
and
fit into this thing by being like this person that I'm trying to fit in with temporarily so I can go back to being myself when it's over?
absolutely, yeah,
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah. No, it's something I'd like to say it's gotten better, but it hasn't. You figure you get older and you wiser, hopefully, or you live with these things in your head, and you can process them better. But unfortunately, when it comes, like maybe a severe anxiety attack, it's almost like the first time.
yeah,
And you forget. You have like amnesia over it, and you're like, but then you have to take a step back and say, well, I've done this many times, and I got through it, and I'm going to get through this.
yeah,
But it's very very hard to do that. For me, it is. And the same with depression. When you're in it, you're like, well, I'm never getting out of this. This is going to
it's the
be
end until it's
this
not.
is it.
Yep.
And then you do get out of it, and it's such a high that because you start to have clarity, you
Yep.
start to see things and it's overwhelming, and you want to run. it's like you just want to start sprinting, do everything that you avoided doing because
Yeah.
of it, and then you set yourself up for
Failure.
well, exactly, yeah,
Yep.
yep.
Yeah. So do you think you are a better writer because of it? Do you think it would make a difference if you lived differently?
That's a good question. I do think recently, because of the isolation or solitude or however you want to say it, it has made me a better writer because it doesn't take much to inspire me.
Hmm.
I, I can find it anywhere, really, um, and I pay attention to details and
Hmm.
people. My how I observe things, I think, is it's a lot better because you appreciate them. You appreciate things that maybe other people take for granted, like walking outside of your house.
Yeah.
As simple
Yeah.
as that. People don't understand that for some of us, me, that is a process. You ever
Hmm.
see that movie What About Bob with Bill
Yep.
Murray,
Yep.
where in the beginning he's getting out of his apartment and he's just pacing back and forth and he's like, all right. He's talking to his goal. That I relate 100% to that,
Yep.
you know. And the writing is my courage. It really is. That's where I find it, and it will be there for me. And I haven't written recently in a couple of weeks, and that's rare for me.
Yeah.
But it's waiting, and it'll probably come after this. Actually,
Yeah.
after
That's
this
that's
episode.
that's one of the next things. Like I kind of want this to also help because when I talked to Tanya, she was talking about, maybe it kind of helped her feel like getting, she wanted to get back into, you know,
Yep,
photography and stuff. And
she's good. She's very good.
yeah, I want this to help the conversation, help us too, because it really is hard to find people in your vicinity,
Yep.
that especially now, because I think people read a lot less. I think we've gotten so adapted to short bursts of entertainment that we've gotten used to short bursts of intellectualism. We've gotten short bursts of things that we don't spend as much time investing in something. So I think
Exactly.
people reading less makes people less inspired to write, because
Yep.
the desire to write comes from reading something that goes, I want to make people feel like I feel with this.
Absolutely.
And so I feel like it's the space between people that have the same desires, like artistic desires, as one person. I think the space between us is getting bigger. So it's harder to find people to
Yep.
talk to, because it is hard to talk to, is for me, non-writers, like even other
Yep.
people of other artistic types sometimes are like, well, I paint, but I have all these paintings, and it's
No,
hard because you have to finish a thing, and then you have to go to people
Yep.
who are going to either like it or not. And more times than not, it's a crapshoot. You're throwing like 2,000 words at somebody and saying, what do you think about this? And
They're
if
like,
you're,
I read the first sentence and that's it.
and I was done. I hated it, and that is the most devastating thing. And I've done it so many times that if I wasn't a writer, I would have quit a long time ago. I think if I didn't know that that's who I was, like I get why people don't, why people say, well, I tried it once and I just self-published everything, because it is an absolutely difficult. It's hard to describe how it feels when you put years into something and somebody's like, it's shit. Nobody wants this, which isn't true, because I think there's an audience for everything,
I agree.
but getting
I
it
agree.
there, the gatekeepers are,
Finding your people or your
Yeah.
niche,
Yeah.
that's half the problem or most of it.
yeah. And I think that is, because I have a thing in here for, saying what is something that you think people in your field, like, what do you think writers that you look up to? Because, when I was younger, I did all the books on writing, this writer that I admire wrote about this, but none of it means anything because I don't feel like any of it has actually, with a few rare examples. I'm like, maybe Stephen King's On Writing
Yep, that's a good one.
is one of the few that I've read that has actually helped. But
Yep. Yeah,
I think that this conversation, talking about the things that we fail at, is important because if I would have known, the amount of sacrifice or pain, because you only see what is out there, you only see what you read, and I keep a Vonnegut rejection letter, a copy of one, and there's also a rejection letter out there with basically Isaac Asimov rejecting Carl Sagan's novel and the stuff he wrote on there,
Yep.
and it's good to know those things, but I don't think we know it enough because,
Absolutely.
if I knew when I was younger that my favorite authors had 50 to 100 no's before they got their first yes, instead of hearing fake it till you make it is one of my, I used to love that statement because, I can feel empowered to be a writer and an author if I just pretend like I am.
Yep.
But then you start to realize that that's not reality because
No.
it's self-sabotage.
Yep.
And I wish that people talked about it more, talked about the negatives more, because I think that's empowering to know what you're in for and be able to say, I'm prepared for this.
Yep.
Is empowering. And I think a lot of that for me, especially in the last decade, when I was really young, rejection letters were not as impersonal. Like they're very much just auto responses anymore.
Yep.
And the whole purpose of them once upon a time was no, but if you want to get this somewhere, you have better luck here or try to work on some of this. And now it's just upload your manuscript to this link and then no, 6 months later, no.
Yep.
And I don't know, to me, that's something that I think, but what is something that you think would have helped you maybe feel more confident about saying, this thing is me?
Yep.
What would have helped you feel more confident about maybe putting that out there?
I think I like what you were saying about the rejection letters, like Kurt Vonnegut, things like that. But is that what you're getting at? Like something that...
yeah, if more people had told you what you were in for realistically, as opposed to,
Yep.
we all fail, but here's all my things that everybody buys that everybody knows, because you look up to them. I think that people tend to gloss over that. They tend to say, I failed, but I made it and you can make it too. And I think that skims over a lot of the work. And I think that there's still a lot of people that are out there working and working and working. And I don't know. I just feel like we don't focus on that enough because there's people who maybe are just starting out. Like they're just saying, I want to start writing. I'm going to be published by next year. And I feel like, especially nowadays, because younger people are so used to, everything being out there all the time that they're saying, well, I can write this thing and next year I can have it out there. And they don't totally grasp the amount of the process, the querying agents and one at a time because you can't dual query. And
well, I have trouble just with the cover letter. I'm like, how do I get a freaking cover letter for these people? I can't write. I start rambling and I go into, they're like, and compare yourself to other authors. And so we have a picture of what you're writing about, or where you fit in, how we can market you. And that's where I go haywire and I can't really
I have somebody else write it for me. I have them tell me in
No, that's
a
a good
shorter
idea.
paragraph as possible
Yeah.
is tell me what you think this is about, maybe
That's
like
right.
3 people, and then kind of
Yeah.
combine them together into a, because I
Yeah, that's
can't.
probably what I should do. No, I
Yeah.
can't do it either. I just try to describe your writing. Well, I can, I can inflate it to a degree where it's ridiculous. This is a transcendent experience for you. Line by line, you will be
Yeah.
mesmerized by the
You end up writing
Shakespeare.
another thing, trying to write that.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
This is 21st century Shakespeare.
Yeah.
Me, so buckle your seatbelts. Yeah.
I end up trying to write about this thing, and I'm like, oh, that gives me an idea for something else I'm
No,
going to do.
yeah. So then I write a story about a query letter or something,
Yeah.
But yeah, I've the rejections I've gotten, yeah, they're pretty much just automatic. They're like, I don't know if AI wrote them or what. We
It's
thank
hard to
you
tell
for
now. Yeah.
but yeah,
Thank you for your submission. This is not what we're looking for right now.
That's absolutely right. Yep.
Yeah.
But it doesn't stop me, and it may stop me from even submitting, but it won't stop me from writing. It's just,
Yeah.
it might be just an addiction at this point, but I'll take it. I'll take it over heroin, and it's not as fun probably.
Yeah.
But I'll live longer.
There are worse bad things that you could do to yourself.
Yeah. I'll take the book reading and the writing.
Yeah.
But no, I'm glad I did this with you. This was helpful in a lot of ways. It really was. So
Yeah, and I agree. And thank you for taking your time, because I know it was probably a little difficult, but
no, I mean I did. I spent 24 hours worrying about this.
Yeah. I do every time I do this, so if that helps.
Well, that does. And then I once it got closer, I kind of calmed down. I was like,
Yeah.
it's fine. You're just gonna have a conversation and a couple of screens, and just talk about what you know, and don't worry about what you say. Just say it.
Yep. And I think this is helpful for, other people, because again, if I had been able to hear a conversation about people who,
Yep. When you were younger.
I feel successful most of the time. Just even not having published, I know I'm able to get it up, and I'm able to work, and I'm able to feel satisfied with what I'm doing most of the time, because I do edit a lot. And I think that if I could sit down and watch people say that, to normalize the amount of failure and rejection, and the amount of mistakes that go into creating something, I want to normalize that for people who might be looking for it.
It's important. Yeah.
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 And so, thank you. This has been
Thank
great.
you. No, it's wonderful.
So I'm going to scoot you off for a minute, and then
Yep.
I'll come back to you in a second.
Okay.
Okay. Where's my thing? Okay. That was Jeremiah. That was really great conversation, and that's not like internet speak. That was great. So I just want to remind everybody, during the conversation, there was a QR code to donate to Literature for Incarcerated Teens. It's a great program. If you guys want to, if anybody out there wants to help out with that cause, right now, that's the QR code for my link tree. Do whatever, I guess. So thanks for watching. I'm going to go ahead and roll my outro. Thanks for watching, and whatever it is that you do, keep at it.